There you go.
There it is.
What's up?
My man, how are we?
All right. What are you up to? What's the
I was
plan?
watching the football game, not gonna lie. And
You're what?
The magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you up to?
Yeah, I just closed the store up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What is
I'm
this?
here.
You have an interesting background.
Yeah, that's the herb counter of my store.
Herb counter.
Yeah.
Fucking A, dude.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I do shit like this is why I have a magazine and why I have a podcast, so I can interesting people.
That's cool.
All right. Are you of the belief that, somewhere in the 1900s, we sort of sold ourselves out for, of real medicine that fixes us for pharmaceuticals?
I mean, I see it that way for sure, but this is purely for me. I don't really mix it into what I do here at the shop. I mean, yeah, that is true. But for me, this is all for witchcraft, for spellcraft.
Oh, shit. No way.
Yeah, that's what this is all about. This is all about people coming here to get the products they need for the spell work that they're doing.
What city are you in?
I'm in Burbank, California. Where are you?
I'm in Ventura.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Oh, there you are.
neighbors.
Ventura. Yeah. Right on.
Do you get heavy traffic in here?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, we're getting very known now. I was on George Norrie's Coast to Coast. That helped a lot. But I mean, our store's been going for 3 years, and it exploded pretty quick. There's a lot of metaphysical New Age stores, definitely, and there's some other pagan stores, but my shop is definitely catering towards straight witchcraft. No middleman. I mean, we sell stones here and crystals, but I don't get the metaphysical community as much as I get people that are into witchcraft and spellcraft, and there's no judgment on their system. So I mean, I deal with left-hand path, Satanism, voodoo, like heavy Santeria, heavy witchcraft. That's who I cater to.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know a witch. Her name's Patty Negri.
She's a good friend. She was just here today.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Patty's a good friend of mine. I'm on her show tomorrow.
Oh, no way. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to put her on my show eventually, but
we had her, she did a seance on our podcast.
Yeah.
And she, oh man, when you're around her, you feel like a different person, right?
Yeah, she's a doll. She's definitely an amazing medium and psychic. That's how, I knew her because many years ago, I think it was about 10 years ago now, I was on a show. They had this millionaire mansion, spend the night in a mansion type of, typical reality shows here in Los Angeles. Yeah. But they actually did it at the Black Dahlia Kill House, where Elizabeth Short died. I'm kind of an Elizabeth Short fanatic. So they found that out and they brought me in to spend the night and talk to people. And she was the person that was doing the seance years ago. And so this is how we connected. We've been friends ever since.
Do you know Mark Nelson? No? He's a psychic. He's a medium. And the cops brought him in to do to try to solve the Black Dahlia murders.
Yeah, the Hodel family and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Steve through the show.
Yeah.
My mother went to high school with Elizabeth Short.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's originally from Medford, Massachusetts. And my mother, her name was Elizabeth Sloan. And she sat one in front because they used to always put everybody by their last names in order. Mm-hmm. And they both grew up in Medford, Mass. And my mom went to school with her. And I'd known about her my whole life, and then I became very obsessed with her, So I became like a little aficionado on her and stuff.
Freaking A, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, this story, Patty's she's definitely got the psychic stuff down and does what she does. I do more like spell crafting. Like people call me to cause change with will. I teach them how to do candle magic, witchcraft, spellcraft, ritual magic. I got a background in ceremonial magic and more specifically the Golden Dawn. And I studied a lot of Aleister Crowley's work years ago. Then I was baptized into 2 covens by the end of the late 80s. And then get moving up in systems from there. And, you know, it's just what I do. I do like heavy spell work, you know, and teach people how to get the components they need to get it done.
How do you learn? I'm just writing notes as I go because you're.
Oh, that's totally fine.
Okay. How do you learn this? Because it seems to me that a lot of our history as humans is lost.
Mm-hmm.
So these right here are definitely from ancient humans.
Yeah.
How do we know? And then how do you go about finding, literature on this?
Well, it wasn't really like find a book. I mean, I started probably, I can't remember the exact time. I probably started in somewhere between 79 and 81, which would have put me at like 15. You know, I grew up in New England. I grew up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And one of my really best friends, who's no longer here, we got into it together. And, like we were in the pre-internet generation. You didn't have much to go on. You weren't even going to the local bookstores because they really didn't have a lot of information on it then. Usually if you went into, the library and you looked at witchcraft, you'd probably find Cavendish's Treasury of Witchcraft, which is from a Christian point of view of what black magic is, and witchcraft, but it's, like pseudo-historical kind of theorem. But there wasn't a lot of books on a lot of strong witchcraft to then. I procured I think one of the first books I ever got was Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Hewson. That came out in the late 70s. And from there, I just, started moving through it. And then in 85, I wanted to get the hell out of New England and I wanted to be a singer in a band because I was really in the middle and, that scene back then, Hollywood Boulevard, KNAC and all that good stuff.
Yeah. For
those that remember that time. And that's what I did. I came here, wanted to date strippers and, be an 80s guy, And
yeah.
it was cool. It was a cool time. But during that same time, I started wanting more information about witchcraft. And I found stores and found little shops. The first one I found was Eye of the Cat in Long Beach, California. And there was a woman there who's now passed away named Judith Dufresne. And I went and I took classes from her. And she was teaching a system that she called the DWA, which DCWA, sorry, Druidic Craft of the Wise of America, or DCW, and which is basically witchcraft, but it had more of a pagan Wiccan kick to it with some ceremonial structure. And I very quickly adapted it, got into it and did my year and a day with them, was baptized in the group. And then I left and did it again in another group with a guy that was teaching Gardnerian and Wicca. Did that with him for about the same time and made it through, baptized again. And then by 91, I was in a Walden bookstore and I found the book, The Golden Dawn, which was Crowley's first order that he was in. And it was written by Israel Regardie. And I started studying it. And when I opened up the book, pre-internet, this leaflet fell out and it picked it up off the ground and said, "Quit the night and seek the day." And I'm like, there's a number. And it was out in Riverside County. And I called it. And it was around the time of the O.J. Simpson fiasco. Because I remember me and a girl hanging out, watching that go on when Al Cowlings was on the freeway and all that stuff was going down. Yeah. And then the phone rang and it was the Golden Dawn. And I joined the order. And then I learned ceremonial magic, left there. And by 95, I made my way to what would be one of the best places I ever got to learn. That was a store called Pan Pipes in Hollywood, California. And the guy that owned it back then was named George Derby. And he became my my mentor for many years. And right around that same time, Fairuza Balk, the actress, put out the movie The Craft.
Yep.
When the whole goth craze was going on. And I was working there, and he was teaching her at the same time. She turned around and actually bought the store. And so I was working at her store by that point. And I just kept learning more systems. Around that same time, I met Anton LaVey, who created the Church of Satan. And I spent in like 15 minutes with him and was really intimidated and all psyched out because I knew I was going to get to meet Anton LaVey. And he said like 5 words. He said, "Don't be a fucking parrot." That's what he said to me. And then he left. And I was like, okay. And so I, studied some of his work, and it was kind of basically when you started looking at Satanism for what it really was from his system, his perspective, it was very, what's the word? It's very nihilistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially nihilism, and he wrote those books in a time during a lot of peace, love, and microdot and the hippie movement. And he was just like causing a shift in that world in San Francisco when you think you're around the hate during the 60s. And that's how that system started. So I studied that for a while, and then I took some respect from it, some cool things from it. Very nihilistic, very, it had some narrow points of view, I thought. And then I left and then just kept moving on in the magical world and worked in a couple other stores, joined some covens. And years later,
considered a warlock?
No, a warlock is there's 2 ways of looking at that word. A warlock, first of all, if you look at it from any type of term from history, they were usually medieval magicians that were used in times of battle. So when you were sword fighting, and you had your knights meeting on the grounds, and they were going to make a bloodbath of themselves, they usually had the warlocks reading entrails of animals or of captive people from the other side. He'd kill them, and they'd read their entrails to foretell the future of the battle. But also that became a very pop cultural term. I deem myself as a witch and a ceremonial magician because I'm simply, in the Me Too generation that we're in, with all due respect to women, because they deserve their time. They're way overdue. I mean, I believe in the equality and the power in women, but I also see witchcraft as a non-binary term. It has nothing to do with genitalia. A witch is a person that causes change with will by utilizing herbs and oils and stones and planetary movement and phases of the moon.
And see,
to causing outcome change.
They have, how you're talking about the craft. They made a new craft.
Yeah.
That just came out.
I saw it.
Yeah, and they had the warlock in there. So that's what like the first thing that came to my head.
Of course. Well, a lot of people do. And it's understandable because you got to remember what most of the world, especially in America, what do we have to go on? Kids have something in their hand that they can spin and get an answer on. But also media. When I saw the pentagram, what was I thinking of the first time I saw it? Early Motley Crue. You know what I mean? It was like glam metal and like Wasp and fucking Dio and shit,
Yeah.
But that's pop culture, and that's where that comes from. But that doesn't mean that that there's not validity in that. But it's just become a term that has been used. I don't take any offense to it, but it's just I want people to see that you can't label someone because of a gender. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, but I've always been kind of a slam up on gender anyways. I'm kind of a weirdo, but I'm a David Bowie and a big Prince freak. I'm an 80s person.
Dude.
So that's my shit,
Yeah.
And those guys were like who I looked up to. It was rock and roll and witchcraft.
When you are performing, is there such thing as dark arts or evil magic?
I personally don't see it as that. That's a very good question to ask, but it's a question I get asked a lot. And I don't believe that there is black or white magic. I believe there's just the individual doing the work. And sure, there's going to be times when you're going to be doing defensive magic or offensive magic. There's going to be times when you're binding someone to stop them from doing something. I got hired to do spell work for a client a couple months ago, and I did a binding spell on her husband because he was beating the crap out of her all the time. And I shut it down by using what I use. Now, I'm not saying, oh, I saved this woman's world, but I helped change that. So that would be deemed a darker art because I'm taking an aggressive act. And I believe that not everybody needs to do that. I mean, I'm sorry about that. It's all individual to the person's view on how they feel about those actions. You shouldn't put, force intent on anybody. This is what we're trying to get, is equality in the world. And if something's right for one person, doesn't mean it has to be right for another. But the person that doesn't think it's right shouldn't be passing judgment on the person that's doing it either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a person that did this in times past, they were who they were because they knew how to affect reality and the outcome of one's environment by utilizing what was around them. I look at it as a science. I don't really see it as mysticism. I'm not a bump in the night guy. I mean, I love what Patty Negri does, but that's not my deal. Patty comes here, and my wife loves Patty, and I love her, but the girls all go upstairs and they do seances when it's not COVID. I don't ever join them. It's not my thing. I just see what I do as causing change with will.
Is there a difference between what you do and, let's say, perhaps something along the lines more mainstream, like The Secret?
The Secret.
The Secret is like you will things to happen. You are in control of your own destiny.
Those are all great things, but I don't see it as that way. I think it's a little bit more than that. I mean, when you start, I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
But affirmationally,
affirmations,
I don't see that as spellcraft.
Okay.
Affirmation is positive thought, and we all need to have that. I think it's a great proponent for people's lives. The vision boards. I want this car. I want that world, and working themselves. Yep. And you wish it, and you can make things manifest. That's different than spell work, though. Spell work is literally it's like an equation for me. It's. Let me show you something really quick. I'm going to flip this around and just show you, just so you can see that. See that?
Oh shit! Yeah.
That sums up witchcraft.
Okay.
So you see those there's 7 planets, right? The Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and the Sun, right? Mm-hmm. So now every one of those is connected to a day in the week. Moon Day, Monday. Tuesday, Mars Day, like it is in French, right? Mm-hmm. Wednesday, Mercury. Thursday, Jupiter. Friday, Venus. Saturday, Saturn. Sunday, Sun. Now look at this here, and you've got intentions, right? Now look, that's Monday. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you'll see that with each one of these days is a color, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where you pick the candles here that you want to use for the spell work that you're doing, for the intentions that you saw. And you correlate all the herbs and the oils that you're using specifically to make that intent happen. So now when you look at the jars on my wall, you'll see that they have symbols on them. Like here, this one is the moon. See that?
Yeah.
So that's Monday. So you start mixing the herbs and the oils. And this is the basics of the basic equations to spellcraft. And that's all based on 2 things. It's based on Ptolemaic structure. Ptolemy was a Greek philosopher that believed that planets had poles and energies on us like the moon does, right? The colors are based on Kabbalah, which is a system that was created, is Hebrew mysticism. But like in ceremonial magic, you learn that it's not so much used the way the Hebrew mystics used it as much as modern magicians use it. This is where the Golden Dawn came into play. So within that set, this imagery, it's like it looks like there's 10 orbs, and each orb has a specific color, and there's a pathway that interconnects them to each one. Okay, and that's the 22 paths and the 10 spheres. Of those 10 spheres, 7 of them are the ancient planets. And each one of them has the energy. And this is where you get the Kabbalistic orientation of color perspective. It's called within the realm of the tree of life, there's 4 realms. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the 4 realms. So here's a black and white version of it. I don't know if you can see this, but see that image?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the 4 realms, you've got the archetypal world on top, the creative world, the formative world, and the world of activity. And that's this realm. So we want it, when you're in each of these worlds, the colors will change. So in the world of creation, where our thoughts come from, we take the color scheme that the Sephiroth or the spheres are, and that's the colors of the planets that we see here. So that's how you start to get your colors for the planets that we use. And this is where the earth and the oils come from. And that's the basis for spellcraft.
Okay, so there's a belief that is a dimension, you said?
Well, realms.
Or realm. Okay, so the realm would start here inside my head?
Not necessarily. The realms are states of being. You're dealing, when you start talking about the realms, it's not on our body. It's the realms in the sphere of the different Sephiroth on the tree of life, or the spheres on the tree that show archetypes of different realms that will build within our psyche. It's so much more vast than that. It's macrocosmic. It's ceremonial magic. I mean, I've been studying since 91, and I know like that much. It's a life. I mean, you have to learn your Hebrew alphabet, the alphanumeric correlation to each letter going to each number, the magical sum or what each letter means, and then you have to figure out how they match to the different Sephiroth on the tree. You also get into astrology and planetary magic. You start working with the planets like we just looked at, and then you start learning things like sigil magic. These are all things that go on. The Golden Dawn book is at least that thick. It's a huge book. And you know, I could speak for 3 days straight with this on, and you would only get that much from me, because I mean, I am by no means an adept. I'm always learning. You know, I just know how to work with planetary magic to cause the changes. There's plenty of people that know more than I do. One of the foremost modern occult authors today is Lon-Milo Duquette. And Lon-Milo Duquette's work is mind-blowing. He's an amazing writer. That he wrote a really great book. And if you ever get a chance and you want to pick up on what I'm talking about, it's easy to read. It's called The Chicken Kabbalah. It's really, actually, I think I might have it here. I don't see it. But it's an easy book to come to, and it's just an easy read, and he does it from an almost whimsical, fun perspective, i.e. like chicken soup, chicken Kabbalah. And he's just tongue in cheek, but he is an amazing, amazing writer. And when you read that, it breaks you into the beginnings of ceremonial magic.
You'd mentioned Aleister Crowley.
Crowley, yeah. Think of holy, but Crowley.
How much do you know about him?
Good amount. I mean, you know, I'm not a specialist, but I know enough about him.
I have 2 big questions.
Okay.
My first question is, I remember like maybe 3 years ago or something, I was watching a YouTube channel. It's not a conspiracy channel or anything like that.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how Aleister Crowley's daughter was Barbara Bush.
Yeah, there's theory on that. We don't know for sure.
Do you know anything of that theory?
Yeah, well, I know I've heard theories on it, but Crowley was a whore. He was a man whore. He was sticking his dick in everything back then. I don't know if I can swear on here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he was hitting everything in his way. You know what I mean? The guy was getting in and out of marriages. He was having orgiastic activities. He had lots of lovers. And when you trace down through the Bush lineage, they say that she had been in places where he was, and there was a woman with names that kind of basically sounded like it was Barbara. But there's no proof on it. So we never will actually know. But I mean, during that time, one of the more important people that really was part of Crowley's life was Jack Parsons.
Jack Parsons.
Jack Parsons had JPL Labs. He made the first rocket engines, and this is where we get JPL in Pasadena, California, right? JPL is now called Jet Propulsion Labs, but it was originally Jack Parsons Labs. And he was in the OTO, which was the Ceremonial Magick Order that Crowley was involved in. And there was a lot of play there that towards the end of Jack Parsons' life, he was trying to attempt to do certain rituals that Crowley had created to bring on the child of the new Aeon through the Whore of Babylon rituals, and bringing in the new Horus, or the new child, into this time. That's the new Aeon, is the birth of the new, leaving the the Piscean age behind. And he thought he could affect that by doing these rituals, and not soon after he passed away. But Jack Parsons was also connected to two other people that were pretty known in the metaphysical world during this time. One was Manly P. Hall, who was a great philosopher. He has a great research center here that he left us here in Los Angeles, called the Philosophical Research Society. And the other person, give me his name, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron.
So L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons and Manly P. Hall used to all hang out. And it was said that there was this joke between them that L. Ron bet $5 that he could start a religion off one of his books.
Sounds about right to me.
I know. So it's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things out there, but a lot of them, they all played together. They all hung out together. And, this is where people like Helena Blavatsky came through, and you had the Theosophical Research Society come out of there. She's a little bit before that, but she played a big part in it. And this is where you see like Gnostic mass going on. You have Gnostic societies around the country, which interlaces with what some people deem as the Illuminati, which is also connected to the Freemasons, which is also the Templars. But these are all interconnected through like Rosicrucian lodges, and the Golden Dawn is part of that lineage.
That's crazy. It's nice.
Yeah, so people just run with things.
So going back to Alistair.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things I might have read or researched on him might be too sensationalized. So pardon me if I talk out of
it's okay.
my pocket. But I have, according to some of the articles I've read and books I've read, and he has murdered people and used them as sacrifices. Is that at all true, or is that possible? And if it is possible to use a human being as a sacrifice, does that make it more powerful of a spell because life has happened or has shed?
Yeah. We can do that in two parts. Crowley, first of all.
Crowley.
When you think of Crowley, think of holy.
Crowley. Yeah.
So when Crowley was out there, he was known as the wickedest man in the world. He was also known as the beast. But it was sensationalism. It was press. He was just an independent thinker. He was outside the box. He was a very intelligent man, but he was also kind of a latchkey kid. He had come from a lot of money, and he was kind of a spoiled brat, and he ran around the world, and he was a mountain climber, and, he did like crazy things, that all the things he could do. He was very punk rock for his time, he was a lot of things. He was a misogynist. He was a drug addict. He was, he was very openly bisexual. Not that that's bad, but he was very open about that back then. You got to think about what you're coming through. The late 1800s, early 1900s. You're dealing with a lot of things back then. People were not ready to hear. So he was looked at as this guy that was just full of the evilest man in the world. And he had these homes. There was one. There was a famous one in Italy that he had where they were having orgies and everybody got syphilis and they were shooting dope. And, it was, very much sounds like something you'd hear Led Zeppelin doing in the 70s, but you got to remember when this was going on, so of course he was very sensationalized and he loved press, it's kind of like, I always go back to rock and roll analogy, but when I was a kid, Gene Simmons from Kiss said something. He said, when somebody asked about Gene, why do you guys wear makeup? Well, we like the shock factor and parents don't like us. And he said, remember, we're loved and we're hated, but we're never ignored. And Crowley was very much like that. But was he a murderer? No, I don't believe so. Was he a fuck around guy? Yes. Did he do amazing rituals? Amazing stuff. Was he incredibly smart? Yes. When you bought Crowley's work, what Crowley was really known for in the occult world was putting fish hooks in his literature. So he would literally write books and send people off the path and knock them out of what they're doing on purpose, just to get them to fuck them up a little bit. Because if he felt that the knowledge was, really important, only certain people should get to it. And you had to work hard to get that knowledge. Other than that though, but his drug addiction and his playboy aspects, he wasn't a murderer. But to go into the second question, I actually covered this on my show, Betwixt the Shadows, 2 weeks ago. And that's my view on sacrifice. See, sacrifice is a dated word. When you think of sacrifice, people are like, oh, I gotta, you hear the crazy, stupid stories about teenagers killing black cats and trying to get the devil to come and all that's kind of bullshit, chicanery. Okay, but what was that really? When animals were killed to bring forth something that they needed, the reason that it was a sacrifice was because if you were in a nomadic situation and the elder of your tribe said, you need to sacrifice one of your cows so the gods will appease you, and you brought your cow, but just so happens that it was September and you were living in, let's say, Britain. And at this time, the winter's coming and you only had 3 of those cows left. And you had to salt them and kill them off yourselves so you would have food for your family through the coming winter. But you would have to dispose of this, something that is worth your breath, to appease these deities. Back then, that makes sense. But if you want to sacrifice today, a sacrifice wouldn't be an animal. It would be the next 3 car payments or the mortgage on your house. Does that make sense? The equation.
Is it what you are losing?
Yeah, it's because
yourself?
you're sacrificing your life. Yeah.
So it's putting you in a state of being vulnerable so that your energy is at a vulnerability to help you bring upon more success, because
you're appeasing
the
gods
back into the corner, you're going to fight your way out.
Yeah.
Oh,
and back then, when you think about something, sensationalism is a thing, especially in media. Think about when we were kids, the way they always made the voodoo priest in the movies, in the old Karloff movies. It was this guy in blackface, or maybe it was a man of color, and he was always stealing the girl and taking the soul, and that was all sensationalism. Voodoo is a very important religion of a people, of a culture, You know, when you look at Haitian voodoo and their culture, it was very important. They were pagan gods. You know, when you looked at Ogun, Ogun was much like Mercury, you know, or Aries. But of course, you know, we were capitalizing on their culture, just like they did when they wanted to make Christianity the dominant factor in pagan Europe. They took Pan and turned him into the devil. He was the shepherd's god, but they needed to perverse him. So they gave him a red tail and they made him menacing. And this is where you start to see the shift of Christianity coming in. But this is what they would do over and over. And, you know, when you get to things like, do you remember the movie Trilogy of Terror with Karen Black?
No.
Might be a little young. I don't mean to.
38.
30. Oh gosh, Jesus. No, you were like 2. Karen Black was a great B movie queen. And there was a movie called Trilogy of Terror in the early 70s. And there's this scene in the movie where she gets this doll and it has big teeth and it has a knife and it shakes and it possesses her, and she ends up calling her mom on the phone at the end of the short film saying, "Mom, come over," and she's got big teeth. And so during this sensationalism, everybody's like, voodoo doll, voodoo magic. But the thing is, voodoo dolls, it's an oxymoron. There is no voodoo dolls. Europeans used dolls. They were called puppets. And they were a way of doing sympathetic magic by creating an effigy or an egregore, a physical egregore of an image of a person, and putting maybe their clothing or their fingernails or their hair in that to impose life to an extent on this doll so they could cause effect on that doll via that person. That's what sympathetic magic is. But they called it voodoo dolls. And that was all a media play.
So, all right, we discussed how a sacrifice is in regards to rituals. But what about some of the ingredients you have behind you?
Okay, they all correlate back to that chart. So the herbs.
What are some things that you could make? That you could, like a spell, like something.
Oh my God, I do spells every night. My client I did a binding spell on Saturday night, and I just did a business spell for a client because she has a situation going on with her business where she's losing footing, and I need to cause change with that. So I called in certain planets. I called in this situation, I called in Venus, because Venus causes an attraction and a lure that makes people want to have focus on, in this situation, her. So I called in the Venus hour, and I used the herbs of Venus for that, and the Venus candle. Then I also called in Mercury because of communication. I needed to get her point across so she could get back in the driver's seat, so she can get her work done. And communication and contracts signed are important. So I went to Mercury for that. And then I also went into the sun, because sun in this particular situation would be success-based. So I correlated the herbs and the oils. The oils are pressed from the herbs, and built them around the candle and created the spell.
When you have, or what are some things? Okay. What are some things that are behind you?
You want to see?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Let's do this.
So let me turn the house lights on just so we can get a little more visual here. The store is pretty awesome. I just dropped something.
It looks awesome.
Yeah. So the store. So this is what you see when you come in.
Nice.
All right. So
and those are all.
Those are all herbs. That's about 300 herbs.
And they're all different. None of them.
Yes. Never the same. None of them are the same.
Oh my God.
So
your brain must be so compartmentalized to know every single herb.
Yeah. And so those herbs all have the symbols on them that I was talking about that correlate to the chart on the wall, right? Remember the chart on the wall. So if you come over here, we start looking at the herbs. Let's see, there is Saturn right there. There is Venus right there. You know, some of them don't have them, some of them do. This is dragon's blood. So you're looking at Mars right there.
You said dragon's blood?
Dragon's blood, yeah.
Is that
Jupiter.
really
Dragon's
blood?
No, dragon's blood is what we call a mastic. Okay, a mastic is like, I'm going to flip the camera again.
Oh.
Here, this is frankincense.
Mhm.
Okay, if you see how they're like beads?
Yes.
So that's pitch that comes out of a tree and then it dries. So when it dries, you collect it and they burn it. Now, dragon's blood is from the draconis tree. And it's from one tree in the middle of Iraq, in the Middle East. Give me 1 second and I will show you what it's like. So there you go. So this is a piece of dragon's blood. So now what happens is they pierce the tree
Mm-hmm.
and they catch it in a muslin bag,
Mm-hmm.
and then it hardens and it takes shape. Then they break it up and you burn this and it creates scent. You know, like when in Christmas, when you talk about the baby Jesus on the manger, you know how they always talk about the three kings?
Yes.
And the three kings came and they brought the child frankincense and myrrh. It's because frankincense and myrrh was basically worth gold back then. Okay, that's myrrh. Looks like this. Let's see. That's a jar of myrrh, and it's another mastic. Okay, but myrrh to a magician or a witch, myrrh is lunar. So anytime I need to do some moon working, myrrh is what I use. But if I want to work with the sun, I'm going to work with frankincense. And then copal is another one. Copal is in here. Jesus, I keep flipping back and forth. Sorry.
I love it. I mean, I am so fucking fascinated right now. It's not even funny.
See that? That's myrrh. I'm sorry. That's copal in there. And then these all come from trees, and it bleeds out. So like this is called gum arabic. Okay, that's another resin. And
so what this does is put a smell together?
Yes. So you can use them a couple of different ways. The mastics, the resins, this is where we get the word incense from. Frankincense. Frankincense was the first incense. And it was burned. It was burned on a charcoal. And it creates white smoke everywhere. Remember, when you use smoke in witchcraft, we use it because it carries the intention upwards.
Okay.
On the smoke. Okay. So now getting back to the witchcraft perspective. So within the word witchcraft, if we have time, I'd like to talk to you about that. Yeah. Because it's a broad term.
We're good.
Okay?
We're good.
There's three ways of looking at there's three basic ways. Okay. There is witchcraft, as most people know it, they usually say Wicca. Okay. Wicca.
That's why I know some people who consider themselves witches.
Yeah, Wiccan is amazing. Wiccan. It's a beautiful religion, but not everybody that's Wiccan decides that they're going to be a witch. A witch is an acknowledgement, but in the Wiccan tradition, it's another way of saying that they're Wiccan. Okay, but Wicca was a development by a man named Gerald Gardner in 1956. Okay, prior to 1956, he was a writer. He wrote a book called Witchcraft Today. And after that, he started to expound upon his theories. And he went basically to the Isle of Man, out in Britain, And he met one woman. They say her name was Dorothy Clutterbuck. We don't know this for sure. But she was this woman that worshipped the old gods of Europe, pre-Christian Europe. And at that same time, he met Doreen Valiente, who was another woman that was working with the old gods. Then he met a woman named Dion Fortune, and she was in the Golden Dawn with Crowley and a bunch of other magicians. And he basically hung with them, learned from them, took the structure of ceremonial magic, broke it down to its essence, and made a simplified version of the structure of the circle that they use, and then took the old gods from Dorothy and created the system that we know as Wicca. So by 59, in 1956 to 58, you could still technically be tried and hung as a witch in Britain. He reappealed that act by 59, and then it became a religion. But you got to remember also that during this time, what was going on? We were coming out of World War II. It was barely 10 years out, not even 10 years out. Okay, America was going through McCarthyism. The world was trying to rebuild itself from a regime of fascism in Germany. And the last thing that these people wanted to hear was there's witches in Europe that are coming back, you know, because people equate witch with evil. And so he really made a point of this structured new religion that they would not harm people, because the last thing they needed was to be repressed again. They're just clearing their name. But now, knowing that, that's Wicca. The other side of it is people that cause change with will by using herbs and oils and planets. But maybe they're Christian, maybe they're agnostic, maybe they're Hindu. It doesn't matter what their religious background is, because it's not about spirituality there. It's just about the equation of doing the work. See, this is where witches have differences. Then you've got traditional witchcraft, is, you know, and then you've got words like hedge witch, which people that only work with herbs, you know, and then you start looking at how they're creating this, you know, homeopathic magic. Homeopathy was not the way, it wasn't natural medicine. I mean, it is natural medicine, but back in the old, people used to believe that if you ate walnuts, you'd be smarter. Why do you think that is?
Because it looks like a brain?
Yep, that's homeopathy. They took the similarities of things around them and adapted healingness to that situation. Lungwort is great to clear the lungs because the leaf looks like a lung. You see, because this is what they had to go on back then.
Yeah. And
this is where some of the ideas of folkloric and root magic comes from. But you know, when you came,
awesome.
Huh?
Like that, to know that, to have that knowledge now, I feel so much better. Oh, because I know I've thought this thought before, but to have someone put it like, yeah, a brain because it looks like a brain, a lung because it looks, that's awesome.
Yeah, but what do we have to go on back then? You got to remember, in Victorian England, they were just chopping up bodies left and right. Yeah. You know, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Why? Because they were shooting electricity into a frog leg and it moved. You know what I mean? I mean, what did they have to go on? You know, people they could only wrap their head around so much. You know, so the esoteric societies of Britain, the Rosicrucian lodges, the Masonic lodges, veined into what we know as the Golden Dawn. That was the mystery school, you know, but it was the Golden Dawn was a groundbreaker because it was one of the first societies to accept women and men as equal. You could have fratres and sorors in the Golden Dawn, meaning brothers and sisters. You know, but there was important people like A.E. Waite came out of there. What's his name? The androgynous poet that David Bowie loved. Oscar Wilde was in the Golden Dawn. There was everybody that was cool in London during the time wanted to get in that club. It was a really cool posh society, because right around that same time, Wallace Budge was making his first discoveries with the pyramids in Egypt, and he thought he broke the code, right? And so everybody during that time, it was like a rash. Everybody in Britain was trying to buy statues and put them in their friggin' homes in the middle of Britain, because the old gods, they finally knew what they meant. But he was wrong. Most of his writings weren't really correct. But mysticism was going, and during this time, there were two sisters in the middle of, I think, Kansas in the United States, who believed that they could talk to the dead. And during that craze, people started wanting to have these seances, and Victorian seances, and guys in hats and top hats, and the women with crusty jewelry, and they get around a table and touch fingers and talk to the dead. This was all just was going on in Victorian England. You know, it was like, because everybody was starving for this information. Industrial Revolution was just birthing then. You know, so they were, oh, it's deep and dark and we can do this. And absinthe was a craze back then for the same reason. You know, it's just, when you start to look at it, it's just people, it's the way they grow. But witchcraft has just been here, and it will always be here. It's been around for lots of time. Some people want to deem it as something mystical, something spooky, but it's not. You know, it's not any of those things. It's me hanging out with someone for an afternoon. They can be doing spellcraft by tomorrow. It's just knowledge. And that's where we get the word occult from. What does occult mean? It means knowledge that is hidden from view. It doesn't mean evil, but people see occult and they don't see the OC, ocular, vision. They see cult, and cult is bad. So that's where, you know, you start looking at these games people play.
There's some people in the world who might believe that there is a cabal within our government that kidnaps children and uses their blood.
Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge of this?
No, I don't. I just, you know, of course, I'm obviously ultra liberal. You know what I mean? We can tell who I voted for. And I know that, what is that called right now? What is that whole craze called? There's a name for it.
They say the QAnon movement, maybe?
QAnon, yeah. No, I mean, is there a Skull and Bones society? Sure. What is Skull and Bones? Just a bunch of like cis dudes that, you know, probably went through Yale, you know, and they're like bumping butts and, you know, crossing fingers, and maybe had a skeleton in a closet that they played with. And, you know, sure. I mean, does that stuff exist? Sure. The Hellfire Clubs existed. Our founding fathers were in the Hellfire Club. You know, Benjamin Franklin was a huge Hellfire Club member.
Benjamin Franklin.
He was in the Hellfire Club. You know, what was that? It was basically a bunch of bad guys getting blowjobs, you know, hanging out in a room with a couple of hot chicks, and they did some crazy ass rituals, you know, very Eyes Wide Shut, very Tom Cruise, but back in the day. You know, was there a black mass? Was there kissing the ass of a goat? Was there a cross upside down? Maybe. Because remember, all these things cause psychodramatic effect on the mind. That's what LaVey was teaching us. You know, the black mass, the mass in noir, was just a way of being edgy and causing a psychodramatic ritual. Ritual is repetitious movement over again. And when you had the black mass, you were, you know, summoning the Dark Lord, and it was just the pomposity of it all. There's a naked girl on the altar, and she's got, you know, turnip wedges stuck between her. You know what I mean? And there's, you know, a python or a whatever boa constrictor sitting on her boobs, and these guys running around with horns on their head. But it was pompous. Psychodrama.
My other question would be, is there something, could you really change, like in the movie The Craft, you see these three women, young women, pausing time,
yeah,
putting love spells on somebody, What is the other things that they were doing?
Glamoury,
Meditating.
change their face.
Yeah. Is
Glamoury.
any of that is any of that possible?
Without the effects of Hollywood, yes.
Yes, without the
But it's not
sensationalism.
going to be the way that Hollywood makes it out to be. I did the Venusian spell with that girl the other night, and I pulled Glamoury on her. That doesn't mean it's going to change her. It's just it's gonna cause people to be like, wait, whoa, I'm listening to you now. You know what I mean? It's not physically changing. Hollywood's gonna, push up a lot, but love spells very much work. People always want me to componentialize and explain how spells work. And is it real? Is it not? I can't say that something is real or not real. I always tell clients, and I get paid really well when I do a spell for someone. And believe me, when people call me and ask me to do spell work, and you can ask any of my clients, I will try to talk them out of the work, because money doesn't mean that much to me. But also, people can't wrap their head around something that's non-linear, if that makes sense. We live in a linear world.
Yeah.
And magic doesn't work in a linear fashion. It works in its time. It works in the macrocosm. What is the component? We got the components down, but what is it that we're trying to do? Spellcraft is a way of causing the aether, the macrocosm, to how do I put this? On the other plane, on the astral plane, okay? They say that the astral plane is a replica of the physical plane, but we want to affect that. So how the best way to explain this magically, a scientist would be like, you're out of your fucking tree. That's okay. But I'm just telling you what I know works. My job by using these components is to create the change on the astral so it reflects on the physical and manifests here. So that's why you always hear that which is above is a reflection of that which is below, and vice versa. That's called the macrocosm and the microcosm. And Kabbalistically, there's a whole theory on that I could expound upon, but it's so deep. But that's black, white, up, down, left, right, macro, micro, infinite, minute. And this is what we're trying to do. So when you use the herbs and the oils and the candles, this is causing change. This is causing the change. It's kind of like when you've ever seen somebody that practices saying the Lotus Sutra. Now there's a known Buddhist community in America called the Nichiren Shoshu, or Nichiren Daishonin. They're two aspects of the same. They're veins. But they teach you to go before the Gohanzen, which is a box. You open it up, and inside it is a Butsudan. And on the Butsudan is a scroll. And on that scroll is the Lotus Sutra. And you repeat words in a monotone voice, something to the effect of like Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and you speed up your time. What you're doing is you're using battery and resonant tonality to affect that scroll and cause their version of what is divine light, and to make you live in harmony and peace. And it causes that change. So using
cat purr?
Huh?
Is it similar to a cat purr?
I don't know what that is.
A cat, like a kitty cat
purring? Oh, cat purring. No, I mean, it's much more than that. The Lotus Sutra is a Buddhist ritual that you say to create one with divine. When you see a Buddhist monk in his space and he's doing his thing, that's one form of it. Okay, but what I'm trying to show you is we use that. That's battery. Resonant tone. When you use words and you enchant and use the incantations. We're saying things in harmonies to cause change on the astral plane to manifest on the physical. Okay, but you're also using components like the green candle with those herbs because they correlate to the planet that we know it connects to, and you are using that to on the physical to also imprint that on your psyche. So my job also as a witch or an occultist, I picture, and again, this is my view. I don't push my view on anybody, and somebody may disagree, and that's totally okay. I'm not about doing that. But for me, I think of the mind. And when you think of the mind, that we know it, we eat, we sleep, we drink, we shit, we piss, we fuck, and we die. Okay, that's like 6% of our mind. The rest of it is massive. We never touch it, except for brief moments in time. And this is where manifestation comes from. So my job is to take components, and the way I explain it to my students is, imagine on the wall of that conscious mind before the vast behind it, imagine, if you can, an aperture lens like on a camera. And when you snap that button, it goes, right? So we can control the exposure and keep that dialed open. If you can do that, it's opening a door into that realm. So you take components and you're moving them and you're using words and incantations to project that into the subconscious mind. Usually when you project onto the subconscious, you can manifest on the material, which is another way of looking at the work that we're doing. So I mean, this is all theorem. There's no proof. But I can tell you that I'm not perfect at what I do. And a lot of times, spellcraft doesn't manifest the way you want it to, but it does manifest, and then something bigger comes out of it. Like I did a working for someone that wanted to get more noticed at the job. They need to get pushed forward. They needed this position filled. They needed to be taken, recognized, and being pushed forward. And then we did the working, and 3 days later, this person was in a career position and the job ended. They let her go. Now,
damn,
when that happened, she was freaking out. Within 2 days of that, another company called her for contract, making more money, and she got a bigger position someplace else. It displaced. She had to go through something to get to that something.
Yeah.
And you can look at that as just the way life moves. I don't think so. I've seen it work. I've seen spells work in 3 days. I've seen spells work in 6 months. I've seen them not work at all. And my success rate is not the best. I would say if I do a spell for someone, my success rate is probably 48%.
48. That's
48 to 52%, right in there. Not every time, but I explain them. That's why when I take on a client, I'm like, look, this is what you're looking at. You can't do a spell for $500 and then sit in your ass and play video games all day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to do certain work. But you can also think things can manifest quickly. And they do. And these places are open. They work because people want to learn to do this. That's what I'm trying to do, is just give them an alternative way of seeing things. One of the most important things that I've got here, and I'll show it to you. I wrote this just because I think I want people to think. This is something I created.
Ooh,
See
that's
that?
beautiful, man.
Thank you. But it is us. We are of the gods.
Yes.
We are of the gods, and that's what when you learn Kabbalistically or in the Golden Dawn, in ceremonial magic, we work with the Godhead. What is the Godhead? It's divine, limitless light. And that means we're pulling from Keter. So I know it's hard to say, but See that white orb? This orb is Keter.
Yes.
And it goes straight down into the manifested realm, which is Malkut. And what a magician does, is they pull the limitless light of the gods down into us. And you work one with the divine, with that energy. Kabbalah is so deep. I wish I could show you more, but when you start reading about it, it used to be that Hasidic Kabbalah was only for men over 40. Women weren't allowed to read it, which is kind of lame. But, mystical Kabbalah is different. I mean, people that study it, when you study it in ceremonial magic, you're also studying Babylonian theories. You're studying the ancient Egyptian gods. You're studying Enochian magic. What is Enochian magic? The magic of angels, working with the archangels, working in realms, parasigillum, creating what's called Kamaic square. Every planet has a total sum of a number. And there's a graph that is made, these squares of the different planets, and they have specific numbers in them. And when you add the numbers up horizontally or vertically, they come to the total sum of the planet. And so you take that graph and you can, by alphanumeric equivalent, you can cross over your name, say John, and you find the numerical value of each letter, and there's a key that you use, and then you take that and you put a piece of paper over that graph and you trace out the name in the numbers, and then you have this glyph, and then you use that for spellcrafting, because that's Kamaic magic. And this starts getting into spirit work and angelic work. You're working with the archangels like Dr. John Dee, who is a Renaissance magician. He was Queen Elizabeth's astrologer. Elizabeth I, back in Renaissance England. Ironically, she had a code for him because he was actually, John Dee was kind of frowned upon by the church because he was practicing the sciences. And when Elizabeth had to get a hold of him, and they would write letters back and forth, you know what his code name was? 007.
That's
It really was 007. And that's
is that where they get it from?
Yeah.
Okay.
It came from John Dee. And so working for Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? So John Dee, in the end, he was thrown out a window and killed. But he worked with the Enochian tablets. And there's certain tablets that are formed where you call in the various angels of God. Enoch, the book of Enoch is Enochian, which is where you hear about King Solomon. Remember King Solomon? Yeah. He was like, King Solomon had these gifts because an angel of God came down and said, I bestow upon you these keys. And these keys will give you all that you want in life. So those keys of Solomon are now in a very famous book called The Keys of Solomon and Clavicula Solomonus, and their rituals on how to use those plates. But that was connected to Enochian theories, and then that moved on into different systems. So within systems, there's more systems. You're dealing with Abrahamic religions. You're dealing with, when you look at, like right now, where are we right now? It's Christmas. No, it's Mithras. It was before Christ. Mithras was before Christ. They just rebuilt the Christ story around him, just like they did with Osiris. They did the same thing to Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Yeah, that's the Trinity. What is Christmas? It's Saturnalia. It's the god Saturn. It was his birthday. It was the 25th of December. Christ was actually in Cancer. They readapted his religion to fit a pagan holiday so people would celebrate and thus fall into line.
And then also the whole 3 days dead and risen.
Yep.
That is our astrology.
Yep. It's all astrology. It totally is. It's all planetary work. So it's going on. It's never ending. It's always been here and it always will be here. We just are. How many? I mean, I don't know about you. I'm Italian.
Me too.
I mean, you are too?
Amoroso, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So like, look at our friggin' family. Look what's on my neck right now. My fucking Malokia, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and the fucking and corno. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that or not.
There you
The
go.
hand and the horn. Okay,
Yeah.
so what were those? My fucking grandma was from Naples. When I was a kid, she made me wear a big ribbon on my chest every time we went out because they didn't want me to get the Malocchio. You know,
Yeah.
growing up in Boston, every Guinea kid in my neighborhood wore the horn, the hand, and a St. Christopher's medal to make sure he got home safe.
Yeah. The St.
That's
Christopher's medal.
witchcraft. That's witchcraft. My wife is from Greece, from Crete. Look at her mother. Her mother will literally call us because they live in Canada part-time. Her mother will be like, are you yawning a lot? And my wife will be, yeah. And she's like, you have evil eye on you. And her mother does a whole ritual to remove the evil eye, but she is a God-fearing Christian. Brujeria in Spanish culture, and in our culture, it's strega, the strega, the Gospels of Aradia by Leland. It was all about Italian witchcraft. It's been here forever and will always be here forever. You know, it's just every culture has their story.
Man, I would love to do a part 2 to this.
Really?
I really would. If you're interested to do it,
I would love to hang out with you, man. I like hanging out with you, so I'm cool with that.
Dude, you're awesome.
Thank you.
And I have a podcast. If you ever want to come down, it's fun. I mean, we have fun.
Yeah, sure. And once we get situated, here, I'm not trying to do a selfish plug, but
no, you need to do selfish plug. Please do. There it is.
Betwixt the Shadows. This show is exploding, and it's every Wednesday night on YouTube. It's got an Instagram account, and you can go to betwixttheshadows@gmail.com, or you can go to Betwixt the Shadows on YouTube. Every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. we go live, and you can text in and say, hey, Sal, it's me. Wanted to ask you a question tonight, and then I'll address it right there on the spot. And once COVID is over, we'll have guests, and I'll bring you in.
Heck yeah,
You know what I mean? We can keep going, but I'd be totally down. We turned that show into a podcast as well.
Awesome.
But I would love to. I'm about sharing, man. I'm about I want people to be well and get through life. You know,
I have like a whole another series of questions that we would never.
Let's keep going.
I have to get going.
All right, you want to do part 2? Let me know.
Yeah, I will. I'll write your people.
Yep.
With the email, and I'll set up a part 2.
I would love that.
Okay, maybe even as early as next Monday.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
All right, man.
I would do this 2-parter, man, for sure.
All
you
right.
are awesome.
You are the best, Sal. Thank you so much. I want to come down to your shop just to say hi and introduce myself.
Yeah, I would love that. If you ever want to hang. Yeah, we're open. I know we should talk about the shop for a second. So the Crooked Path is at 2020 West Magnolia Boulevard in the city of Burbank, California. We're on the corner of Magnolia and Keystone, and we're on the south side of the street. We are open every day from 12 to 6 right now. When people show up, they have to be wearing a mask, of course, and we give everybody that walks in gloves to wear so they can touch things. Sundays, we're open 12 to 5. I'm in the shop every day except for Tuesday and Sunday. Those are my 2 days off. But yeah, we're right here. You can find us on Instagram at the Crooked Path _LA, Crooked Path Occult, or the crookedpathshop.com. And Betwixt the Shadows is where you can find me. You can search that on any front. You'll find it.
Man, I love you, buddy.
I love you too.
This is an awesome friendship.
That's better. So we're guineas. You know, we got this.
I know, man.
All right.
All right. I will reach out to people and hopefully I'll see you Monday.
All right. Ciao.
All right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.